Welcome back. Today, I have a fantastic guest. He is the founder of Genetic Insights and an expert in genetics and rejuvenation. He's on a mission to change the world by empowering people to understand themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, Elwin Robinson.
Hi, Elwin. Thank you for that very enthusiastic introduction. It's great to be here.
It's all right. I just pieced it together out of your bio. It's cool.
Perfect.
Perfect. Genetic testing and health. I'm super into this right now because I feel like the whole world is going through this health and knowledge about what we're eating and what our bodies need, and we're all different, right? Like when I eat an apple and you eat an apple, our bodies digest that differently. It does different things with it. So we're all individual snowflakes, and you are going to help us find out what is ideal for us as a snowflake without any of that wussy stuff involved. Just individualized snowflakes.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of attempts at that in the past, like dividing people into different types, going back hundreds or thousands of years. Like in Western medicine, before we discovered bacteria or anything like that, we were talking about like different humors. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, like you're a phlegmatic or choleric or anything like that. And there's Ayurveda going back thousands of years, dividing people into different types. But those types are often quite neat. They're kind of, you're either this or you're that. You're either a carb person or you're a fat burner, that kind of stuff. You're either a plant-based person or you're an animal-based person. And then the truth is, that life isn't like that. Life is messy. Some people do really well digesting almost any type of food. Some people do really badly digesting almost any type of food. And most of us are somewhere in between. So, I'm excited to talk about this. It's definitely an interesting topic.
Yeah, so this is relatively kind of new approach to our self-care is the genetic testing and finding out what specifically is good for our bodies. So when did this all start? When did you get into this, and how did the company start?
I thought you were going to ask me about genetics, and I was like, oh, let me go back to my history. No, I'll just talk about me. That's probably easier. Just to briefly address the first point, I guess. Yeah, we had to, be able to decode the genome first, and then we had to know what everything actually meant. And we're still, as a civilization, as a species, probably quite early on in that process of figuring out what it all means. But we've worked out enough that we can give you some pretty accurate and helpful information. So I guess that's the short answer to that. In terms of my own journey, are we talking more about diet and stuff specifically in this podcast?
Ideally, yeah, but I would also, I'm also curious about like enzymes in our organs, etc.
Yeah. Okay. I've eaten different diets throughout my life. My parents were both very much into alternative health stuff. I grew up the first 4 years on a strict macrobiotic diet, which meant like no sugar, no dairy, no this, no that, all this kind of stuff. And throughout my life, throughout my early life, I had that. Then when I was a teenager, I rebelled, ate whatever I want, which was like a lot of coffee, chocolate, pizza, like the worst kind of food, as well as, smoking.
All the stuff kids really want.
Yeah, as well as smoking and drinking and doing drugs and everything else that you're not supposed to do for your health. And then I started to become quite unwell in my late 20s, which I always put down to genetics. Both my parents are pretty unhealthy. My dad had like ME, my mother had cancer several times and died pretty young. So I thought, well, even though I didn't like to think about it that way, I just kind of figured that's just bad luck, like my parents are both pretty weak, so am I. And I'd always been underweight, I'd always been really, tall and skinny. And in my late 20s, I tried a bunch. I started to develop this kind of digestive discomfort and this fatigue and hypersensitivity to stress. I had to quit my. I used to work as a chef in a busy Italian restaurant as a sous chef, where there's constant orders coming in, constant deadlines. Right, this is going to be ready in 2 minutes. This is going to be ready in 3 minutes. This is going to be ready in 6 minutes. Stress. So I had to quit all that, and I got a job instead working in a retirement home where I basically had to prepare like 2 meals a day. And there was a lot of like sitting around in between. And I earned the same amount of money for doing a tenth of the amount of work, which was quite interesting. But it was boring and it had no prestige, and it was not much fun. But yeah, it kind of saved me, as it were. Anyway, so I tried a lot of different diets, I guess is the bottom line. And I've tried all kinds of diets, I would say. I've tried, veganism. I've tried carnivorism. I've tried fruitarianism. I tried raw veganism. I tried vegetarianism. I tried pescatarianism. I tried metabolic typing diet, blood type diet, Ayurvedic diet, 5 elements diet. I could go on and on and on. I tried a lot of different things
So
because
ridiculous.
I know, because I was always underweight. I always had digestive issues. I was always low energy. And yeah, I just didn't feel good. And every time I ate, I didn't feel good. I usually would only eat 2 meals a day, but not because I was trying to lose weight. I was already underweight, but because I literally couldn't eat anymore. That was too uncomfortable. And so, yeah, in terms of working out what actually agreed with me, when I hit age 40, I suddenly developed this pain in my liver area, this stabbing pain, which doctor couldn't explain and understand. They did all the tests on me, MRI, CT, bloods, ultrasound, all that kind of stuff. Went to all these alternative practitioners, and I went down every avenue, Reyshan. I went down, is it a physical structural issue, like chiropractor, osteopath, physios, all this kind of thing? I went down, is it a nutritional issue? Is it a emotional issue? Is it a spiritual issue? Like everything. Is it an intellectual issue? Any dimension it possibly could be, and tried so many different things. And basically, and obviously, medical issues, the first thing I tried, I saw numerous practitioners again, but none of them could find anything. So, and eventually I discovered this service that said, if you have ever done a test before, like 23andMe, you can upload your raw data from that service, and within a few hours, we'll be able to tell you all of this information, including about your diet and digestion and stuff like that. And
Really?
I was pretty desperate at that point. I'd already spent, as I said, years of pain. I realized that most people are in pain. I think over 50% of people over the age of 40 are in chronic pain. But this pain was slightly unusual. But this pain was slightly unusual in the fact that painkillers didn't work on it. And in fact, any kind of opioid painkiller made it substantially worse. So for most people, when they're in pain, they've always got a get-out clause, right? They can always take something. But there was literally nothing I could take. So I had this pain, and it got worse every time I ate, and there was no kind of escaping from it. So that sucked.
Yeah, so anyway, no one knows what's wrong with you.
No one knows. No one.
No one knows. So what year did you find the website?
2021. Yeah, 2021.
2021. Not just the other day.
Yeah, not that long ago. Yeah, absolutely. And I uploaded my raw data from 23andMe. I did 23andMe back in 2013, so it was almost 8 years old, but apparently that doesn't matter because it stays the same throughout your whole life. I uploaded it, and within a few hours, it gave me all this information, like way more than I ever would have imagined. Like in terms of value for money for testing, I don't know if you ever had to do testing you paid for yourself, but I'd done a lot of it, and I was like amazed at how much information it provided. Second, I was amazed at how accurate it was. And then third of all, it gave me the clues that were necessary to work out what was going on with me and to resolve it. So I was well won over. However, I thought maybe it's a fluke. You never know. I'm skeptical. So I tried it on my wife, my business partners, my friends, my employees, some family members, basically anyone who was willing to do it. And again, it was just very, very accurate and helpful.
Everyone was different.
Sorry?
Everyone was different.
Everyone was different, yeah. So first of all, that's right, yeah. I was able to make sure that they weren't just kind of feeding you what you want to hear, like cold reading style, like saying stuff that's vague, but you can see your own meaning in it, because I saw lots of different people's results, and they were very different in each case. And it turned out, the actual cause of my pain, I'll give that away, is something called sphincter of Oddi dysfunction, which is something to do with the valve of your gallbladder getting stuck or spasming and not working properly, which builds up this pain and this pressure with this stuff called bile, which is this digestive juice created by your liver. And one of the causes of that is, or one of the potential root causes of that is a deficiency of a certain nutrient called choline. And some people need more choline in their diet than others because they don't make very much themselves. Choline isn't like one of the like vitamins or something. They used to class it as a B vitamin, and they said actually it's not one because your body can make its own. But your body struggles to make its own, and some people with a specific genetic variant don't make their own very well. And I was one of those people who didn't make their own. Yeah, and my diet for a long time had been very low in choline because it's not actually easy to get choline. The main thing it's in is egg yolks or liver. I've never liked either of those things, so I'd been, a couple of decades barely eating that, and so I had a severe choline deficiency.
I bet you eat a lot of eggs now, don't you?
I still don't like eggs.
Do you still don't like eggs?
Yeah. Still don't like it. Still gross to me. It's my own particular, psychological issue. But I've never been keen on chickens ever since I lived on a farm with them and their eggs. And anyway, I'm fine with meat, dairy, and everything else, just not eggs. But So I don't know. Long story short, it helped me work out what was going on, what the pain was, how to resolve it. It turned out that some simple nutritional stuff was actually at the root of it, and that's it.
And it fixed it. So how did you come to realize that that was the actual problem from the deficiency? Were you just like Googling like your deficiencies and what problems they cause?
Yeah, so when you have that deficiency long term, it can create something called cholestasis. So cholestasis is where the bile, which again is this, it's digestive fluid created by your liver, but it's also the main way that your liver gets toxins out of your body. So your liver is filtering a lot of stuff, the blood specifically, and the lymph, and then it builds up those toxins, puts it in this digestive juice, which then gets squirted into your duodenum, then through your small intestine, your large intestine, and out through your poop, right? So when that stuff starts to get too thick, it starts to get stuck in there, and it starts to really aggravate and irritate it. And for some people, that leads to, long-term it leads to gallstones. For some people, long-term it leads to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. For me, it was much more unusual. What happened to me was much more unusual than both of those things, but it happens to some people. And so, that was one of the things. It's not the only thing. There were several other things that it showed up, but I know we're focusing more on kind of food and nutrition in this.
But did you take the test back to the doctor, or like how did you finally diagnose yourself with that being your issue?
Yeah, I went to see a doctor. They recommended a specific type of what's the word? I can't remember. Visceral therapist who then did an examination on me, and they determined that's what it was. And then I went back, and the medical doctor agreed.
It's so often than not that we have to end up doing, as people, our own research on our own medical conditions before we get to the doctor. Because 90%, I feel like 90% of the time, when there's something that's just not the obvious general thing that it should be, that they don't take the time to figure it out for you. And I feel like that's their job. But we have to go and do the research and go find a genetic test on our own because they don't recommend this genetic test. They don't even ask you about diet half the time as their first questions, right?
Well, yeah, but you're talking about like a normal, physician that you go to, like what we call general practitioner over here. But I went to see people who, are private, who you're paying them. They've got hours to look at your case and to examine you and to do tests and all the rest of it. They still couldn't work it out. And to be fair to them, I mean, it's an unusual situation what I had. It's not common.
Common, right.
But I do see, I've worked with a lot of people since then, and I see a lot of more common things which just had been ignored by physicians that they really should have spotted and really should have, worked out, that were actually quite easy to ascertain by looking, first of all, at someone's genetics. Ideally, we don't diagnose based on genetics. It's just that with genetics, it gives you such a broad amount of information. It helps to narrow down what to focus on. Because if you go to a doctor and say, I've got a general thing, like I got fatigue, I got digestive problems, I got allergies, whatever, right? Test me. They could literally spend hundreds of thousands of dollars testing you for everything it could be, right? If they wanted to be thorough.
Right.
And some of them do, especially in the US, if they're trying to get as much money out of you as
The
possible.
insurance is paying for it, so rack it up.
But they often still won't test the things that are actually the most helpful, ironically. But anyway, usually, it's a lot. Most people won't pay for it. The insurance won't pay for it. So with the genetics, it helps you narrow down what's it more likely to be. Because obviously we can't diagnose, but we give risk scores. So we can say, you have an elevated risk of this. Or in the case of nutrients that we talked about earlier, you have an increased need for this kind of nutrient. Or perhaps you don't handle this nutrient very well. Like you don't do very well with saturated fats, or you don't do very well with simple carbs, or whatever. Like these are things that it's helpful to know, and then you can look into it. Oh, you have a tendency for an allergy to this thing or to that thing. Okay, that's not to say you definitely have it, but that means it's worth spending the money to test to see.
And then you can take that information to a nutritionist if you don't want to go through it all. And a nutritionist can help you based on your DNA to set up an appropriate diet for your personal genetics, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we work with doctors and practitioners with our genetic platform. I do consults with people, just walking them through their genetics if they want it, although it's not necessary. All the information's in the reports, and then our reports are very, mainstream science. I will sometimes give more outside the box interpretations, but all our reports are 100%. FTC, FDA compliant. Pretty much every sentence in the report has got like several citations in there. So the good thing about that is that you can give it to a normal doctor, and they might not listen, because some doctors don't listen to anyone. They won't even listen if you say another doctor said something. They'll go, oh no.
So I don't trust that guy.
But if the doctor is reasonably open-minded, if they're not completely arrogant, which many of them are open-minded. They just want to hear the evidence and the studies, which can be a limitation sometimes where they don't listen to common sense, but it's a reasonable position. And so our reports have plenty of those studies and the science behind it. So a reasonably open-minded doctor will look at that, and I've had many cases where they will do testing as a result of seeing what our report says.
Right. I mean, I think it's hopefully going to be a standard in like your a checkup when you get a new doctor. You'll just examine the genetics, and now I have a good profile on you. I don't know why they don't do that now, right?
It's foolish that they don't do it.
It should be step one, right? Like for your physical, let me get some blood. Let's go find out what your physiology's like. All right, cool. Now I know all that stuff. Tell me about your pains and your aches and your whatevers and what have yous. But now I at least can like reference.
Yep.
What potentially, like it should be step one.
It proves to me
I don't even know that any hospitals do that.
Yeah, it proves to me that there is something a little bit like, not a conspiracy, but where like everyone's in on it. Because the people who should be doing it at the very least is insurance companies, because they should be going, well, if we're going to insure you, why don't we see what your risks are of all of these different things? If they actually cared primarily about making money, it's the most obvious thing in the world. But they don't. They're kind of in this thing together with the pharmaceutical industry and the regulatory industry and the medical industry, and they're all kind of in cahoots with each other. But if they were really open-minded, if a doctor really wanted to help you, as you said, he would get this information, she would get this information. If the insurance company really wanted to assess what risk there was with you, then they would get this information. And then I guess the thing that is becoming a little bit more, like that probably will be coming in the next 5 or 10 years, is if a pharmaceutical company really wanted to help you, they would check this information before prescribing to you. And that is something that is coming in more and more now. My prediction would be, I said 5, maybe 10 years, there will be more of that they will reference your genetics before prescribing something. They won't prescribe something willy-nilly, at least all the time. They might still just give you antibiotics if you have a, whatever, like without checking. But I think with a lot of medications, they're going to start checking this.
A lot of people are allergic to the antibiotics. And I listen to a lot of stories about people who went to the hospital given antibiotics they were allergic to. Now they're getting EpiPens. Now that and now they're having a heart attack because and this was all could have been avoided had you known what you were allergic to begin with. If you just had that file, you wouldn't have been given the wrong medication.
Well, yes. again, with genetics, you can't say for certain that someone's going to be allergic to something, but you can say they have an elevated risk that makes it worth testing. So that's still, as you say, worth it if you're trying to prevent these serious, potentially life-threatening side effects.
Lawsuits. So many things that I mean, you would think that they would want it. But in the meantime, we can come to you to get it.
Yeah, for now, I mean, as you said, we do work with some doctors, but we are more, a direct-to-consumer platform. With many other genetic testing kind of companies, and there are others that exist, you get your reports or your report back from them, and it's a bunch of gobbledygook. It's a bunch of science. You don't even know what to do with it, and you've got to have a practitioner actually interpret it for you.
Explain it.
Often that's actually because their systems are not very sophisticated, ironically. So literally all they'll do, so your genome, if you go to 23andMe or Ancestry or something like that and you download the raw data, there's just this huge file with like lines and lines and lines of text. And all those companies do is they'll just pick out a specific bit and go, this means this, right? Whereas what a company like ours does, and we're not the only one, but we're definitely the cheapest or most affordable one who does this, is we'll actually go, you know what? You've got this and this and this and this. Let's use AI to calculate all of those different factors and come up with an overall score, like risk score and recommendations. Like, for instance, for heart health, cardiovascular health, we're assessing about 1.1 million different SNPs, which are like different areas of the code, and we're comparing them all against each other and then coming out with a conclusion. Whereas a lot of the simpler companies, they'll literally go, you have this one thing, that means you have an elevated risk or you have a reduced risk, rather than calculating them all and comparing them to each other and weighting them appropriately and all the rest of it. So we do something that's difficult that most other companies don't do, because we have several dozen full-time AI engineers, we have several dozen full-time research scientists. Most of the other companies can't do that. And so because of that, we're actually able to come up with something that is useful to you. You don't have to understand science and biochemistry and genetics to understand what we're saying. We just go at the end, we give you, as I said, the citations, we'll list the genes for you, but we'll say in the bottom line is, you have an elevated risk, or you have a medium risk, or you have a reduced risk. It's very simple for you to understand, and then we make recommendations. And again, recommendations based on genetics.
Yeah.
For one person, if they have a higher risk of heart disease, their number one recommendation might be exercise, but for another person, it might be, getting adequate sunlight, or for another person, it may be a specific supplement, or for another person, it may be a specific diet, or, whatever. It might be different types of exercise for different types of people. And so it's also useful not just to know your risk, which is useful-ish. It's a bit, on its own, it's a bit disempowering, right?
Depressing.
Depressing. Yeah, exactly. But we also give you something to do. And I know that those recommendations work. I'll tell you why. Because I tend to speak with two categories of people. One is like people who are in the same position I was in, which is they're really struggling and really desperate for a solution. And they've tried lots of things, but they're struggling and, okay, I'll give this a try. The other category of people I speak to is the people who are already doing really well. Often they're like health influencers, they're experts, they're doctors, whatever. And when I speak to the people who are doing really well, I'm always a little bit, It's always a bit more difficult, ironically, because we're going through those reports and I have to go to them, okay, you have an increased risk of this. Have you ever had that? And they go, nope. Okay, you've got a very high risk of this. Have you ever had that? Nope. And it makes it seem like our reports are not very accurate. Whereas if I speak to a normal person, by the time they're 40 years old, if I go through the list, I'll be like, you have a high risk of this. Is that true? Like, yeah. So when I go through it but then we look at the recommendations and I'm like, okay, but look at the recommendations. Are you doing this one? Yes. Are you doing this one? Yes. Are you doing this one? Yes. Are you doing that one? No, sometimes. So basically, like it really, anecdotally, I realized, but I see it. I see it over and over again that the people who are doing this stuff and have been doing it a long time, they haven't manifested these things, even the things they have high risk for. So, one of the most common questions I get is, am I stuck with my genes? Just like I said earlier, I had bad genetics from my parents. I'll give you an example of this. My mother was very overweight. My dad was very underweight. I was always very skinny. I thought I'd take after my dad genetically. Fair enough, right? I do my genetic tests. I get my results. It says you have a tendency to be normal weight. And I'm like, well, that's not accurate. I've literally been underweight my whole life. To give you figures, 6'3", I was always like 150 pounds something, right? So that's not accurate.
Yeah.
Then I start sorting out my digestive issues. I'm able to eat enough. My body's able to absorb the nutrients. Now I'm like 190 pounds, which is normal weight for my height.
Normal.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but literally I had to, I had to like resolve my issues for my genetic report to be accurate in that sense. Does that make sense? So sometimes it goes the other way. Well, it's like a type thing rather than like a problem thing. So, I see that another example is when I had all these digestive issues, there are all these foods I couldn't eat without having a problem, without having this pain or discomfort or something sharp. Oh God, it was exhausting. There was literally like, I could count on one hand the foods I could eat without some kind of problem. It was, it sucked. And I always thought, well, I've got a lot of food allergies, a lot of food intolerances, very common these days, whether you believe it or not. I do, I meet a lot of people who really struggle with it. Anyway, I believe in it, but it wasn't me, because when I looked at my genetics, it said you do not have any food allergies or intolerances except for gluten. That was the only one. But, that's hardly anything, right? Like every other food you're fine with. I was like, well, again, that's not accurate. I can't eat all these things without having all these symptoms. So that's not true. But then I started to resolve the digestive issues, and then suddenly I could eat all those foods again. And so, sometimes it goes the other way, I guess. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes it looks like it's not accurate, but then, what I say to people is, if you have an allergy and you get a report from us saying you have that allergy, the good news is it's verified it, but the bad news is you probably always have it at least a little bit, because there's a real genetic basis for it. Your symptoms might go from a 9 out of 10 to a 2 out of 10, but it'll never be a 0, because there is a real genetic basis. There might be if you take antihistamines, but they won't naturally be 0. But if you get a genetic report and it says there's no genetic basis for it, then you can definitely go down to a 0 out of 10 for symptoms, because you don't have a real allergy. Like either you've developed one, but then if it's developed later in life, then it can also go away. Or it isn't an allergy at all. It's actually something else.
It's the processing of the food that you're eating.
Yeah.
So like when you switched your diet, were you still eating basic junk food up until that point, and you just switched to what? No. So you were already being healthy at that point.
Yeah,
healthy.
I kind of skipped.
You were trying all the diets,
but from my late 20s, I tried to eat healthy. I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't do drugs, I didn't do sugar, I didn't do junk foods, no fast food, no whatever, like crappy restaurant food, anything like that.
All the way up until you're 40. So 20 years of that.
Yeah,
20 years of eating pretty smartly.
Between 28 and 40, I was eating supposedly very healthy. Still very deficient in things I needed, like I gave you one example, choline. But if anyone looked at me, they would go, "Oh my God, you're eating so healthy!" Like, but it wasn't healthy for me. That was the distinction. That's what I ended up realizing.
So, what can you eat? What were you supposed to, or do you eat now?
I still eat like high quality stuff because I can, I can afford to. So I realize not everyone can. But I eat the very simple diet that probably most people would consider unhealthy, ironically. So I eat dairy, especially sheep and goat. I have beef. I have like sourdough bread. I have potatoes, like root vegetables, like olives, whatever. I eat mainly savory food. That agrees with me better. I mean, I can eat dessert or whatever, but it just, I don't know. I've never really liked it. I've always been more of a savory person. I eat more like animal foods, breads, and root vegetables.
You eat food.
Exactly like
you eat real, regular food.
This is the crazy thing. Not berries and superfoods, not broccoli, not all these things that are supposed to be good for you, and they are good for some people. So I don't want to, again, make any universal thing. But the idea that green vegetables and colorful fruits and whatever else they say is like good for everyone, nuts and seeds, the idea that those things are like good for everyone is not accurate at all. It's good for some people some of the time, but it's definitely not good for everyone, and especially a lot of men, I've noticed. As you just said, you identified with what I just said. That's healthy food, right? Like a lot of men do feel good with red meat, some with dairy, some not. with potatoes and kind of root vegetables, with, like grains, oats, breads, whatever, stuff like that. Some of us like some spice, some of us like some tomato, some of us like this and that. But that's more like, what's the word? Accompaniment, right? Rather than like a basic staple. Yeah, it's as simple as that.
Would you say that you crave the foods that you eat now?
To me,
So like
craving.
one day you'll crave a steak for
Oh
one
yeah,
day, or
yeah.
maybe
In
another
that
day,
sense, yeah.
or maybe
Yeah,
another day.
craving to me implies something a bit unhealthy, but I know what you mean. Like, do I get signals from my body that it wants certain things?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And because in America, our sensors are broken. We don't they've literally overwritten them with junk food and chemicals and colors and flavors, and so our operatus mundi is to go for our addiction cravings, right, as opposed to our
Yeah.
body's necessity cravings, because our sensors have been turned off. We don't recognize what we need when we need it anymore, because all we want is the cheeseburger.
I
Or the
100%
Doritos.
agree with that. And that's why when I hear a lot of kind of more hippie-ish kind of people saying, all you need to do is listen to your body, man. All you need to do is listen to your intuition. But when I was a drug addict, if I checked in with my body, what do you want? It would go drugs. That doesn't mean that
Drugs.
it was accurate. and the stuff you just said kind of is drugs, right? The additives that they put in those processed
The
foods.
flavors.
Yeah, they have drug-like qualities. So yeah, we do have to be, and that's where the genetics are helpful. As I said, if a person's already in a state of fairly optimal health, all they have to do is listen to their body. But most of us are not that, for the reasons you said, and maybe other reasons. And what you said is much more common, but certainly with my audience, like they have a different problem, which is they're eating a bunch of stuff because they think they should, right? Whether it's the kale smoothie or the acai bowl or whatever, and the goji berries, they think that that's good for them. And again, it might be, but it might be not good for them at all, and they just don't realize that because again, they're not listening to their body. They're like following this. What's the word? Like
The guru
should.
thing.
Yeah.
Should. You're chasing the rabbit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. So when we're done chasing the rabbit, and we come to the realization that we need to look at ourselves and make the decisions, this is fun. So do you ever get one of your clients who just like wins that genetic lottery, who like bacon is like their positive, and and they've been eating kale forever, and all of a sudden you're like, no, you should actually be eating bacon. The kale is actually not good for you.
I don't see
Yes!
bacon very often, but I'll give you an example of something I do see, which pretty much everyone thinks is bad for you, and it's dairy, right? Like, how many health gurus out there are ever saying you need to eat cheese? I mean, that's pretty much unheard of. And yet I see a pattern often. It's especially when people have an increased need for vitamin K2 and increased need for calcium. And it's actually very hard to get a lot of calcium other than from dairy. It's the only thing that's really high in it. I mean, it's like eggshell, bone, who the hell's eating that, right? So it's basically dairy. Even stuff that's supposed to be high in calcium, like spinach, most of it is not like usable by the body because it's bound up with something called oxalate, which is toxic. So basically, if you need a lot of calcium, really, if you're going to get it from food, it's going to be dairy. And then vitamin K comes from fermented food, which most people are not eating, like kimchi or sauerkraut. If they're eating anything fermented, it's cheese again, right? Or maybe yogurt. So, fermented dairy, yogurt or cheese. And whenever I meet people with that pattern, and I say to them, do you love cheese or do you love yogurt? Oh, yeah, I love it, but I don't eat it because it's, everyone says it's bad for you. The only thing everyone can agree on is that cheese is bad for you, right? Even the carnivores who are like animal food only, they usually don't like cheese. No one likes cheese. And then I'm like, well,
I love cheese.
and I see it in their recommendations, quite often for certain people. They have like in the top 3, top 5, like dairy. And I'm like, not everyone has that. And for some people, it's terrible. Like for people who respond badly to saturated fat, for instance, like cheese is not a good idea. It's like 50% saturated fat. That's just gonna, increase your LDL and your, your risk of heart disease. I'm not saying cheese is good for everyone, but it's an example of what you said.
Of winning the genetic lottery.
Yeah.
You get all the cheese you want. Congratulations. The few, the proud, the cheeseheads.
I mean, beef, I see it for. I mean, bacon, it's still full of nitrates and all kinds of chemicals, right? But, just red meat, pork, but, beef, lamb, or whatever. Yeah, there are definitely people who need to eat more of it because they need, they need heme iron, they need carnitine, they need carnosine, they need all these things that are really only found in significant quantities in red meat. And if you have an increased need for those things because of your genetics, then it's actually foolish to never eat those things.
Right.
And some people do fine with saturated fat. I'm one of those people. I do great with saturated fat. I do great with high levels of dietary fat. It's no problem to me. Doesn't make me gain weight. Doesn't make my cholesterol go up. Like, it's totally fine. But my co-host, Chrissy, on my podcast, Rejuvenate podcast, I go through her genetics with her. She does really badly with saturated fat. So, she has to have, like, olive oil or, stuff like that. And that's fine. That's good for her. Like, it's not about like which guru is right and which guru is wrong. It's about what's good for me based on my genetics.
Yeah. Super insightful, sir. So I want a genetics test. They want a genetics test. Where do we go get the genetics test?
If you go to Genetic Insights with an S, geneticinsights.co, geneticinsights.co, then all our genetic tests are there. If you've ever done 23andMe, Ancestry, MyHeritage, any of these kind of popular companies before, then it's super easy. You can get your results in a few hours, just like I did. Otherwise, you can order a DNA kit from us. It can take anything from 4 to 8 weeks to get your results. That's the one downside, that it takes a little while. And I'm happy to offer a coupon code. Oh yeah, I
love coupon codes.
Let's do it now. 25% off.
Yeah.
What should we have the coupon code be for your audience?
We can call the coupon code just beyond the check. Just beyond the check.
Okay, beyond the check. That's what it's going to be. Let's have it all capital letters, no spaces.
All capital letters, no spaces. Coupon code for 25% off your genetic tests. Go get one right now. The link is right down there too, so just click on it. It's going to take you there. And use the code beyond the check, and you get 25% off, and you can finally know what's up with your body.
Yeah, I think I'll give you a link for the nutritional needs package. I can't remember the link off the top of my head, but if you want to check the show notes, I believe that's $65. So if you're 25% off, that's under $50 to find out your need for every single nutrient, every amino acid, every mineral, every vitamin, protein, fat, all of that kind of stuff, all for under $50.
What?
Yeah.
Dude,
it really is very affordable. Our highest
that is the most affordable.
Where you get absolutely everything is $197. So again, that's less than $150 with your 25%. So that's the absolute most expensive option. The absolute cheapest, like if you just want to find out one specific area, like blood sugar or heart health or something like that, the cheapest is like $45. I'm pretty sure the nutrient needs is $65. So yeah, I didn't say this whole part of my story, but very, very briefly, I love the company I used, but they had two problems. It was too expensive and it was too complicated. So that's why I created Genetic Insights. That's why I created my own company. Make it way more affordable, way simpler for a normal person. That's the quick version, but that's what we do.
Spot on. I appreciate that so much, because I've looked into them. I might be an affiliate for one or two other out there somewhere. Haven't really done anything with it yet, but the pricing on those I know, and it's a retardedly expensive compared to you. So,
and I'll happily thank you so much. And I'll happily, side by side comparison with any of those more expensive ones that our results are just as helpful, just as accurate, if not more so.
Spot on. That is wonderful. Everybody, Genetic Insights with an S, geneticinsights.co. Go there. Let's get tested and make sure that we're eating the best things that we should be eating for ourselves. And you can thank Elwin for that. Yeah, thanks, Elwin.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. What are you having for dinner tonight?
Probably the same thing I usually have, which would be like roast potatoes, steak, some goat's cheese, sheep steak cheese. I'll probably do some like olives, capers. Something like that. Yeah, I think. Usually have that for dinner.
I feel like You'd really like Corinne's filet, where her cookbook is. It's around here somewhere, but it's a feta filet.
Oh,
So
lovely.
you
Yeah,
basic-
exactly. That's right up my alley.
Yeah, you sear the filet, sear the feta, cut the feta so it's a nice thick chunk. Get the feta all fried, so you got the fried cheese, and you just set it on top of the steak, and just a little lemon juice. You can throw some capers in there too, because I hear you like capers. And
Bit Italian, yeah.
it's a band.
Yeah, that sounds
fantastic
awesome.
steak.
Yeah, like I prefer that to mustard or steak sauce or any of that. Just give me some cheese on top. That's perfect.
Right? Just really bring the richness all together.
Lovely.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been super insightful because I really am into this whole let's look at ourselves, and diets are crazy, right? They always have been. And I think that's why people floundered so much and why there's so many of them, because we all are so different. And this is a great way to finally see the light, if you will, of the truth of what food and our personal interactions are as individual snowflakes. So anyway, thank you for all the work, and tell everybody at the company and your wife I said hello.
Thank you. Appreciate you very much
Awesome.
the opportunity to share this with your audience.
Oh, I am super excited, and I'm gonna finally get myself tested because I never have. I'm one of those people who I pretty much could always eat whatever I wanted, whether it was junk food or healthy or whatever. My mother was an herbalist. I grew up with carob and no sugar. We went to the grandparents, and yes, by high school I was eating all the trash I wanted, and I pretty much just balanced somewhere between trash and I always cook, so it's home cooked meals and fast food home meal for and then I finally stopped all of that, and I only eat real food. Finally, I guess.
Very nice. Well, you're probably, because you're healthy, you'll probably just confirm that what you're doing is right. But I guess that's still good to know, right?
No, it is. It's nice to know that if I want to feel even better, what I should just eat to maintain my optimum, not feeling drowsy or drained, or what things do pull me down. So,
yeah, that may still be the odd
that.
thing. Yeah.
Because we all just want to feel better and get through our days in an easier way, right? And if that's just skipping one thing that we eat on a regular and replacing it with something else, and all of a sudden your day's better, that's all we can really ask for, I think.
When it comes to food, exactly. Just give me, let me enjoy it, let it be fuel, and let it make me feel good. Exactly.
That's right. Awesome. All right, everybody, go get your genetic test. Go thank Elwin for that, because he's making it super simple for all of us and affordable. So, because we should all be able to know, and at a reasonable price. So, go check it out. Thank you all for watching. Stay fresh.
Order up.